Although Chambord City's Saint Seiya's hadn't participated in too many bloody head-on confrontations, but the individual strength enhancement from the Hulk potion was able to make up for their lack of experience. Faced with the elite soldiers of the Black Stone Kingdom, every soldier demonstrated terrifying fighting strength. Shields that weighed hundreds of pounds and axes of exaggerated shapes felt like weightless straws in their hands. When swinging, strong gales of wind would follow, and the moment a black stone soldier came into contact with it, they would immediately wish they were never born. Clang, with giant axes swinging through, any weapons, shields, or armor would feel like paper, immediately shattering into pieces. One shield bash forward, dozens of enemies would fly like kites, struggling hopelessly as they puked out blood and flew into the sky. This was the most head-on confrontation, a fierce collision between brute forces. In such a battle, not a single ordinary soldier of the Blackstone army could receive one blow from Chambord City's Saint Seiya's. The situation was just one-sided, like a group of tigers charging into a herd of sheep. Since the very beginning, it was an asymmetrical battle and unilateral oppressive massacre. Despite the great number on Blackstone's side, the narrow street designs inside the Blackstone fortress became their own nightmare. In the past, they would take advantage of this design to slowly kill off their enemies, but at this moment, this field limited their ability to capitalize on their numbers advantage. The 6 groups of Saint Seiya's, under Lampard and the other 5 elite masters' leadership, were like 6 ruthless lawn mowers. Their blades relentlessly advanced roaring, and all that the Black Stone soldiers could do were to fall row by row as they like helpless grass, and whine like little bitches. Thunder lightning fist! A flashing electric light exploded from Lampard's hand, like a blinding sun just appeared in the crowd, suddenly stunning countless Black Stone soldiers. Then, a fist that couldn't be tracked by vision landed again and again on the soldiers in front of this red-haired man. The figures in front of him felt like sacks of dusts flying all over the sky, and then turning into bloody mist under the explosions as they began to fall down. Corpse piling shock wave. After the second growth stage, the 2-meter-tall meat mountain warden Oleg roared. His whole body of fat began to tremble, and then he leaned over, suddenly punching fiercely into the ground. Under the loud rumbling sound, 2 huge spider web-like cracks with his fists as the center quickly began spreading forward. At the next moment, a shockwave undetectable by the naked eye suddenly appeared in the ground, and with countless click and snap sounds, all the Black Stone soldiers within a 20 meters radius in front of Oleg suddenly stopped. A gust of wind flew past, and something appalling happened. A fissure appeared in the fixed soldier's body. The crack grew larger and bigger, and finally, their skin, skeleton, hair, armor, shield, along with the weapons in their hand, all fell down to the ground like a collapsed sand statue. This was a new ultimate skill Oleg had learned from Faye. The 2 fists would pour all the physical strength and energy force into the earth, and then through a special channel of energy it would trigger an invisible super-frequency shockwave. This was a terrifying and deadly shock wave, capable of quietly shattering any solid material. It carried the breath of death, and it was hard to guard against. After one move, ahead of Oleg was 46 neatly stacked meat and blood piles mixed with metal scraps. The scene was bloody and scary. The corpse-piling shock wave scroll was created after Faye reached level 28 with his assassin mode with a few references to the necromancer mode. After reaching level 28 with the help of the newly gained energy channels, Faye explored the corresponding energy channels in the real world, and also studied the Earth-style energy scroll that he looted from the 4-star magician Evans's dimension ring. He then ultimately created this scroll. Faye named this scroll Corpse-Piling Shock Wave, after the Saint Seiya Death Mask Skill Corpse Underworld Wave, demonstrating his obsession with that anime once again. The style actually suited Warden Oleg. This guy also used to be a villain, and he often dealt with the dead, so he carried a scent of death. This scroll was basically tailor-made for Oleg. 15 days ago, Faye bestowed this scroll onto Oleg as a reward for starting and taking care of the paper-making factory and sewage system when he was on hiatus. A few hours ago, this fatty finally mastered a few keys in this skill, and the effect was already incredible for a first-time user. It's just that, with his current physical strength and energy level, such a skill could only be used once within a short period of time and needed a certain recovery period. But this time it was enough to terrify the Black Stone soldiers, and no one dared to stay in front of Oleg anymore. Of course, as for showing off, the two professionals Paul Pierce and Drogba definitely wouldn't let the fat man take away the glory. Right when Oleg was using his ultimate, the two Saint Seiya both used their own ultimate skills. Exthurkske a Ali Ani Ibur. The Capricorn Saint Seiya shouted in the most exaggerating way possible. A golden light flashed on his arm, and instantly, his right arm incredibly became an indestructible golden sword. Gently waving it in the air, an invisible sword breath surged up and silently crosscut through. Schwa, instantly the 60 or so enemies within 20 meters in front were clearly cut in half at the waist, including their armor and the weapons in their hands. Even the castle wall behind them had a 1-meter deep sword cut in it. Many soldiers didn't even feel any pain, let alone know what was happening. Their feet were still running, but the upper half of their body was stopped in place. Jaini Gae Antaya, Akhunuwarn. The Taurus Saint Seiya Drogba's huge body leaned slightly forward. A golden light flashed on his head, and a golden helmet with 2 sexy giant horns appeared. In the next instant, Drogba's legs unleashed explosive strength which sent him sprinting forward. They saw that all the enemies that got in his way had their bodies shattered into pierces, and suddenly heads, arms, legs, bodies, butts began flying everywhere. Such a simple charge of about 30 meters sent 60 soldiers to hell. After witnessing this incredible scene, the old man Zola and the thin boy Modric that were situated inside the Chambord army's protection circle went through the emotional stages of the initial shock, to the current state of blood boiling. Even though, in the past, the fame of the Chambord king and the knights under his command had already been spread to their ears, which lit the fire of hope as their body went through all kinds of painful torture and supported them through all hardship, even though they once fantasized about how mighty the Chambord king and his army were. But even with the most optimistic fantasies, they did not imagine that they would see what they are seeing now. Powerful. Too powerful. This degree of strength had gone far beyond the imagination of all Chambord citizens that were enslaved here. Old man Zola couldn't help but let his tears roll down his wrinkled face. Thank fucking God. Our Chambord city finally has a mighty king and powerful knights that can protect its people. Such a sudden feeling of happiness was so unreal, Zola and Modric both tried to rub their eyes, scared that at the next instant they would come to the realization that it was just an illusion. As their blood was boiling, the young man that saved them both, the back image of Chambord's King Alexander, suddenly transformed into a purple and green light in the mad wind. Everywhere he went past, all the enemies from Blackstone Kingdom were sliced in half. Even those star-tier warriors that were normally well-respected and normally referred to as elites were not able to survive for an instant under the Chambord King's sword. This was a truly unrivaled king. Shoot arrows. Hurry and shoot arrows. A sharp, angry voice suddenly came from above the walls of the Blackstone fortress, and this loud voice finally snapped those black stone archers that stood in the mountains back to reality. They fought back their fear and began pulling on their bow. Black Stone King, I've waited for you for a long time, Faye shouted. He suddenly leaped up and shot himself towards the cliff where the sound came from. The purple and green swords disappeared, and Faye's 2 fists brutally struck the mountainside with terrifying strength. During this time, in addition to killing all the elites that could pose a threat to the Saint Seiyas, Faye had been searching for the Blackstone King's hideout. He was certain, under this situation, such an ambitious and brutal king would surely hide at a corner to command his army. During that morning, Faye already remembered the Blackstone King's voice, and when that voice sounded, Faye was immediately certain that the speaker was definitely the Blackstone King. Rumble. 2 terrifying punches bombarded the mountainside, and the steep mountain wall suddenly exposed a 2-meter wide and deep pit. A large amount of gravel fell down. There was indeed a hidden chamber on the mountainside, and the people hidden inside were instantly killed by the shockwave. Faye swept past the dead bodies, and noticed that the enemy king was not among them. But a simple small magic seal appeared in Faye's vision, and it was destroyed. Faye suddenly understood what happened. This was a very simple voice transmission magic seal, just like a speaker in his past life. It could broadcast words from elsewhere to hear and amplify it, Looks like the Black Stone King was talking out of this magic seal just now. Shamboard King, you dare to attack my Black Stone Fortress. You breached the Imperial law. Hee. Don't get too happy. Sooner or later you will be trialed by the Empire's judgment team. Black Stone King's voice echoed in the valley. Go fuck yourself. You harmed my people. I will slaughter your entire city? Faye roared. When thousands of people from my city died at that death pit in the back mountains of your fortress, how come the Imperial law didn't cross your mind? Black Stone Kingdom must pay the price for what it did. I swear to the God of War, Your Majesty the King Alexander swears with the royal glory of Shamboard City. I will kill the Black Stone King and destroy Black Stone City. Swear to destroy my Black Stone Kingdom? The Black Stone King laughed. Ha ha ha. Shamboard King, you are too naive. We can talk about it after you get out of this scorching mountain. But in the middle of his sentence, his voice suddenly stopped, as if he was choked by someone right beside him, and no words followed after that. Thousands of archers hidden in the outposts and mountain walls shot into the sky. The sound of arrows pierced the sky, and the vibration of the bow strings echoed in the mountains. Waves after waves of arrows that blotted out the sun began flying towards Shamboard's army. The arrows dropped down like a torrential rain, and as can be expected, the arrow rain actually completely covered the battlefield indiscriminately. Many Black Stone soldiers didn't have enough time to retreat and were shot by their own archers. Some gained a hole in their chest, some got shot in the eye, and some got shot in the leg. They all cried miserably as they fell to the ground, and before they even had time to struggle, they were instantly shot into hedgehogs. Ah! Same side. Stop shooting. We are on the same side. The Black Stone soldiers' screams sounded like hell on earth. However, such a level of arrows wouldn't trouble high-level elites like Lampard, Czech, and the others. Before the arrows even come into a meter distance around them, the arrows would powerlessly fall. To fighters like Warden Oleg and the other muscular men, their physical body were enhanced by large doses of the Hulk potion. Their skin became tough and thick, and normal arrows, if not shot from heavy crossbows or not aiming for eye or other key parts, wouldn't hurt them at all. Other than the 6 master fighters, the sky-covering arrow rain still brought a little trouble to the other Saint Seiyas. Although there was heavy armor covering large areas of their bodies, there would still be someone that got shot in the arms or legs that were not covered. However, at this moment, the Shamboard soldiers' morale already surged because of King Alexander's words earlier. The blood-boiled warriors actually forgot the feeling of pain. They just pulled out the arrows from their body, roared, and continued their charge. Ha 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 ha. Shamboard King. Today I will let you witness your own elites dying under a rain of arrows due to your impulsiveness and stupidity. The Black Stone King's voice sounded again, but it was a little erratic. Faye tilted his ears trying to capture the direction of the source, but there were no results. What a joke! You think your douchebags can kill my Shamboard warriors? Faye sneered and shouted, Bylaw enforcement officers, shoot down all of those archers. Pew 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 pew. A series of even more sonorous bow string sounds began echoing in response to Faye's command, and they instantly took command of the sky. The arrows were like hungry locusts, eagerly flying to their enemies. The bows used by Shamboard's bylaw enforcement officers were manufactured by Shamboard's blacksmiths under the guidance of high-level blacksmiths and casting masters of the Diablo world. These officers all more or less took some Hulk potion, although their change weren't as drastic as Warden Oleg or the others. Their strength, though, had definitely significantly improved, capable of lifting thousands of pounds of weight. So, these bows were all super powerful bows tailor-designed for these officers. Plus, these guys also learned from the female rogues, and they became god-tier shooters. Very soon, 50 or so of these bows gradually suppressed the thousands of enemy archers. New help? Even though the enemy archers were hiding, they were still shot down easily by the bylaw enforcement officers, and those Black Stone archers that were standing on the high ground with their flies wide open, they had nowhere to hide or run. Just like dumplings getting boiled, they suddenly began falling down as they screamed, "Kill the archers first!" With the command, the 6 master warriors jumped out of the crowd at the same time. They all chose a different direction and began mercilessly slaughtering, and all the skills they used were large-area ultimate killing techniques. After a quick slaughter, the black castle walls kept breaking apart due to the immense force, and the two mountainsides also began to collapse. Giant boulders began falling off and killed many black stone soldiers that were trying to hide. At that moment, it felt like the end of the world, with all the dust and dirt covering the sky. Under the terrifying attacks, the 1,000 black stone archers were like crops exposed to the scorching sun and the brutal blizzard. Soon most died, and those that luckily survived all turned around to escape, not daring to pop up their head again. Chambord City reclaimed their upper hand. The Black Stone Army's defeat was inevitable. This fortress that was carefully operated for many years would turn into ruins and become history, bearing witness of the Chambord warriors' glory. But just then, Fei's face changed, because he suddenly felt clearly that there were more than 10 weak magical forces fluctuating, beginning to gather on both sides of the mountain walls in the distance. This phenomenon was clearly caused by sorcerers or magic matrices gathering magical power and charging to make a powerful strike. As Fei expected, a kingdom like the Black Stone Kingdom indeed hid magic power from the public. They already possessed the power of magic. The Black Stone King painstakingly ran his kingdom for so many years. Not only had its army size and equipment tiers far surpassed Chambord's, they were even ahead in the cultivation of magic. The voice-transmitting magic array that appeared in the secret chamber on the side of the mountain was one piece of evidence. Now, there were dozens of magic energy fluctuations that would for sure deal significant damage to the Chambord Expedition Army if activated. But, haha, I was afraid that you wouldn't show up. Fei had long been ready for this. He instantly switched to Amazon Warrior mode. Making a light grip in the air, a red flame flashed past. And at the next second, there was a peculiarly designed bow with triple-edged barbs, just like a pair of opened eagle wings. The feathers stacked neatly, and the bow's body was slender and refined, covered in crimson-red scale-like patterns. Such a long bow appeared out of thin air in his left hand. With his left hand holding onto the bow string, a crimson magic arrow with fluctuating energy appeared. Rumble. Fei's left hand became a red blur, and the bowstring sounded as loud as thunder. Rows of red magic arrows shot out like bullets in strings of 10, all towards the same direction. Under just 3 seconds, Fei actually shot out 120 magic arrows. The Amazon's powerful arrow skill, strafe. Very soon, rumble. A barrage of explosion sounds came from the distance, and don't know what the arrows hit, but they triggered multiple violent explosions after piercing the stone walls. Dozens of magical energy fluctuations of different elements leaked out, and they were accompanied by a series of miserable screams. Lampard and the others suddenly realized what happened. If it wasn't for His Majesty the King's fast reaction, the enemy's charged magic attacks would have successfully been launched. By that time, casualties were inevitable. Everyone was once again shocked by Fei's peerless shooting skills. This is their first time seeing Fei use a bow, and as a type of weapon that was usually deemed weak by elite warriors in the world of cultivation, it could actually give birth to such a powerful magic attack in the hands of His Majesty the King. It was even able to instantly kill dozens of hidden magicians. This inspired the bylaw enforcement officers to tightly hold onto their ball, as they saw the direction for their future. Damn it, Alexander. It is not impossible for both of us to exist together. The Black Stone King was flustered, and the malicious and vicious voice sounded again. But this time he didn't use the magic-speaking array. The direction which his voice came from was very clear. Fei almost immediately leaped off the ground, and as he shot himself towards that direction, the eagle wing-like bow also violently trembled once, and another barrage of magic flaming arrows shot out towards that direction too. Rumble! A giant fissure was torn open on the west side of the mountain wall by those magic arrows. The stone collapsed and revealed the buildings inside. There was indeed a secret chamber. Fei's eyes were sharp like thunder, right away spotting the Black Stone King's muscular back image running his ass away into another passage in the secret chamber under protection of guards. Haha! Running away now? Too late. Fei stepped into the stone chamber, and with the eagle wing bow in his hand, he dashed into the passage and closely followed. This was a very narrow passage, so narrow that it could only let one person pass at a time. It was dark, narrow, yet long. Fei maintained a high degree of vigilance, but his steps did not slow down at all, and he was in hot pursuit. It was about 10 minutes, and Fei started hearing the sound of footsteps coming from afar. Pew! Fei raised his arm and shot an arrow right away. Painful cry came along right after. Fei got closer and took a glance. 2 guards were shot through the heart and died, and the Blackstone King was still running. After about another 5 to 6 minutes, Fei's vision suddenly broadened. He finally got out of the tunnel, but there was no trace of the Blackstone King and his guards. Fei jumped up to a higher ground, and he spotted the Blackstone King and 6 guards riding away on horses. So they had already prepared horses at the entrance of the secret tunnel, and the moment they got out, everything would be ready to go. A cold smile hung on Fei's face. Pew! Another arrow shot out, and a black stone guard in the distance let out a shrilling cry as he fell off from the horseback. Blackstone King, you can't escape. The current Blackstone King and his guards were still within the Amazon Archer mode's range. However, Fei wasn't in a hurry to kill this tyrant, but rather wanted him to experience the fear of death. Fei just casually let out arrows one after another, each taking away a life of a Blackstone guard that was riding beside the Blackstone King. Very soon, beside the king, there was only one heavily armored guard left. Such a move really brought great deterrence and fear to the Blackstone King. He was whipping his horse's ass like crazy as he was covered in sweat himself. Then, there would come miserable cries right beside him as he lost more and more guards. He couldn't help but shiver, and an unprecedented feeling of fear came. He was this close to death for the first time. It was as if someone was already holding a sharp sword against his back, and a chill surged all the way from his tailbone to the top of his skull. The Blackstone King's soul was about to jump out of his body. He mercilessly stabbed the dagger into his warhorse's ass, which caused the horse to cry and run like crazy. At that moment, Fei's arrow had locked onto his back. The moment he let loose the bowstring, the arrow could instantly kill this ambitious conspirator and tyrant right on the spot. But at that moment, Fei suddenly changed his mind, because he thought of an even better way to deal with this brutal king, who was responsible for the deaths of thousands of defenseless Chambord citizens. Bang! The bowstring on the bow of Eagle's wing vibrated mercilessly as Fei shot out the arrow. However, the target was the Blackstone King's horse. Bam! Blackstone King, who was already so scared, lost all of the basic instincts of a 2-star warrior. When his horse fell to the ground, he didn't react fast enough and fell down with the horse as well. He rolled on the ground for a few rounds. His face and clothes got all dirty, and a few of his teeth got knocked out of his mouth. The golden crown with the ruby as a decorative piece, which he would even wear in his sleep, also fell down and rolled to a bush quite far away. In front of him, the only guard who was left looked back at him and whipped his horse as he escaped like a madman. He didn't care about his king's life at all. At this point, he just didn't want Fei to target him with the sharp arrow. A cold smile appeared on Fei's face as he saw his enemies in such chaos. He quickly switched back to necromancer mode, and the gray-whitish gloomy cold death energy surrounded him and covered his face and body. Then he quickly rushed to somewhere that was about 20 meters away from Blackstone King. At this moment, the Blackstone King didn't notice Fei's approach as his head was still dizzy from the fall. Fei formed a fist with his hand and suddenly spread out his fingers. Gray death energy shot out of his 5 fingers and instantly turned into 5 gray ghost-like creatures that were whining and crying. Like sharks that smelled blood, the 5 ghosts dashed towards Blackstone King and disappeared as they tore open the king's armor and bit into it. Necromancer curse skill, decrepit. The target of the curse would quickly age and be slowed. Any damage that the target received was amplified. After Fei casted the curse, he thought about it and wasn't satisfied. He opened his palms again, and a cloud of death energy rotated in his palm like a mini tornado. He pushed that energy towards the Blackstone King, and it instantly went into the king's body as well. Then, Fei was the only one who was able to see that a light red flame appeared above the Blackstone King's head. Necromancer curse skill, confusion. the target of the curse would fall into a state of anxiety and chaos. The target would turn very aggressive and want to attack everything around him or her while ignoring if they were allies or foe. After casting the 2 spells, Faye finally stopped. Without hesitation, he switched back to barbarian mode and used leap. In a few dashes, he disappeared from where he was standing. He was rushing back to Blackstone Fortress through the underground path he took before. This was the first time he used cursed skills of necromancer in real life. Decrepit would make the King of Blackstone lose all of his energy and spirit and stay in a state of fast aging and pain. Any kind of injury, including splinters from wood, would make him bleed continuously. Confusion, on the other hand, would make him very aggressive. Even the closest people like his kids, wives, and trusted ministers would be attacked by him. The Blackstone King would turn into a wasted man with these 2 curses on him. He would turn into a ferocious and violent beast. The cleverness that he once had would all be gone. With regards to the Blackstone Kingdom, this king would only lead them to chaos and killing, and the kingdom would be in fear, uproar, and turbulence. These 2 curses would be with the Blackstone King until he died, unless someone voluntarily helped him to get rid of the curses. But the chance of that happening was very slim. From the obscene old man Kane's analysis, although the necromancer skills and the undead magic on Azeroth continent shared the same roots, they differed a lot of the techniques and casting processes. Faye was sure that no one in the Zenith Empire was able to get rid of the terrifying curses from the Diablo world. Of course, Faye had thought about conquering Blackstone Kingdom before, but this wasn't the right time. First, Chambord Expeditionary Force needed to go to St. Petersburg for the military practice. This opportunity had the priority on the list. Before Chambord had the power to battle with its parent empire, Faye would have to play by their rules. Through participating in the military exercise, Chambord was able to get more resources and space for future development. Also, Zenith, as the parent empire, was able to protect Chambord, who was in its infancy, from external dangers like an umbrella. Although the battle between the 2 kingdoms was already illegal, it could be covered by excuses like all of the corpses of mine slaves from Chambord, just like how Chambord used the excuses of the attack of the 9 kingdoms to capture their princes. It didn't really matter if Faye destroyed the buildings on the surface, but killing the royal family of a kingdom was considered treason since most of the kings were canonized by the Zenith Empire. Especially since Blackstone was a level 4 affiliated kingdom and Chambord was only a level 6, and thus the king of Blackstone had a higher status than Faye. If Faye killed the Blackstone king, the law enforcement Night Palace would definitely be after him. Although Faye wasn't scared of them, Chambord needed peace and time to grow, so it was smarter just to not get into any trouble. At this moment, Faye had to let this king live. There were plenty of opportunities to kill this enemy. Through the dark and long underground tunnel, Faye soon returned to the Blackstone Fortress. The battle was pretty much gone. 90% of the 4,000 elite soldiers from Blackstone Kingdom were dead. The rest of them had dropped their weapons and kneeled down in the square, shivering as they waited for the Chambord soldiers' commands. Dash. In the neighs of a horse, Blackstone King, who was still in the grasses, raised his head and looked up. The guard who ditched him in danger came back. "Your Majesty, are you okay?" The guard took off his helmet and showed his young face. Due to the fear, his black hair was wet and messy. His tone didn't sound like someone who pledged loyalty to the king, but he did sound earnest, as if he knew he shouldn't have ditched the king and escape alone. "Humph! I won't die." Blackstone King slowly sat up in the grasses. Although he didn't die in the moment, he was still scared. Although he still held a grudge against the young man in front of him, he controlled himself well. He stared at the direction where Faye disappeared and said with unprecedented viciousness and hatred, "King of Chambord, I didn't die this time. You will regret this. Soon, as the King of Blackstone, I promise that you will see your castle getting conquered, and all your subjects getting murdered in front of you. As the king, I swear that I will make you wish you are already dead." So weird? Why did the King of Chambord leave? The young man murmured curiously. "Nothing strange. Although that idiot is violent, he is not stupid. He knew what will happen if he killed me, the king of a level 6 affiliated kingdom, Although he doesn't dare to kill me, I will kill him one day. The black-haired young man didn't agree with the king's opinion, but he didn't say anything more. He exhaled and said, "Okay, if you are okay, when we should act in accordance with the plan. Let's go back to Blackstone Castle first and get prepared for the Burning Sun operation." "Okay, but Prince Evan, my military suffered a great lose. All the cavaliers that I have were lost in the Blackstone Fortress. If we want to monitor King of Chambord, we might have to tell the big boss to find some other people." After thinking about the collapse of Blackstone Fortress and the clean sweep of his 4,000 elite soldiers, Blackstone King felt like his heart was bleeding. "That's no problem. The King of Chambord and Chambord's strength are beyond our original estimation. We have to tell everything that happened here to the big boss?" As he said, the black-haired Prince Evan waved his hand and called down a white-winged eagle that was flying in the sky. He talked to the bird in a strange language, and the eagle soon flew away. The Blackstone King felt very ashamed, but he was still scared. Chambord's power was far beyond his estimation. Not only was the Chambord King's strength powerful, the warriors under him were powerful as well. All of this made Blackstone King feel an unprecedented fear. As he supported himself on a big rock and wanted to stand up, his body suddenly shook and felt an unprecedented weakness. The arm that he used to swing his sword and kill his enemies couldn't use any strength. His nose also felt cold, and when he touched his nose with his hands, blood smeared his hand. "Shit! I must have got injured from falling down the horse." Blackstone King didn't pay much attention to it. He had been through wars, and it was normal for him to get injured. He forced himself to stand up as he got a horse that belonged to one of his guard who was killed by an arrow. When he wanted to jump onto the horse, his legs suddenly felt very weak as well. If he didn't hold onto the rein, he would fall off of the horse again. When he used all of his warrior energy and barely got onto the back of the horse, his nose started to bleed even more. For some reason, Blackstone King had a desire of wanting to tear Prince Evan, who was the prince of a top-affiliated kingdom and was ordering him around, into pieces. At that moment, he even held onto the handle of his sword. When he half drew his sword and wanted to stab at Prince Evan, the tiny bit of consciousness he had left stopped him. The Blackstone King's mind was filled with questions. What is going on? Why would such a bloody and vicious idea appear in my head? I almost lost control. He told himself that this black-haired Prince Evan wasn't someone that his Blackstone Kingdom could offend as he forced his hand off of the handle of his sword. However, he felt like taking his hand off of the hilt was harder than giving up his 4,000 elite soldiers and the entire Blackstone Fortress. The black-haired Prince Evan didn't know about this and rode his horse in front. He didn't sense a pair of blood-seeking red eyes were staring at his back, and he did know that his life had jumped on the sickle of the Grim Reaper half a dozen times already. In silence, both of them rode towards Blackstone Kingdom's capital, Blackstone Castle. They were scared of the King of Chambord like two dogs. One of them was still dizzy from the fall, and one of them didn't even dare to look back while escaping. Prince Evan didn't see what Faye did when he was in his necromancer mode at all. He felt like he lost his face and wouldn't tell what happened to anyone, just like the Blackstone King. At the same time, a white-winged eagle cried as it flew into the clouds and disappeared in the sky. Blackstone Fortress, Water Dungeon. The shouting toned down outside, and the curiosity of the people who were inside the dungeon got stronger and stronger. Unbelievable! Who dares make chaos in Blackstone Fortress? A thin and tall man who was locked onto a moist and cold stone wall by chains asked his friend beside him as he moved his waist. In fact, that was the only body part that he was able to move slightly. That damn prison guard pierced through this man's limbs with spiked iron chains. The wounds continued to heal and break open due to the movement of this man against the sharp spikes. The red blood dripped into the disgusting black liquid that filled up to the man's knees along with pus from the inflamed wounds. What was surprising was that although this man had no complete skin on his body and a ton of wounds, his expression was still light as if he wasn't living in hell. He didn't look desperate or depressed with just a smile on his face. Maybe a mercenary team or merchant caravans have been targeted by these damn vampires of Blackstone. Maybe the Blackstone King had killed a group of people just for the money alone, just like the last few times. Someone beside that man answered, "Are you still hoping for a miracle to occur? Listen to it, there is no more noise. The poor pray. They are probably all eaten up by those demons. If you can still think about our fate. That bastard Blackstone King is really going to murder all of us. Chambord mine slaves." All of Chambord mine slaves were concentrated in this water dungeon. The dungeon was located in an underground cave on the side of a cliff. It was quite similar to the old iron prison water dungeon in the back of Chambord, but the condition was almost 100 times worse. The water that was about knee-high was actually all slimy, stinky liquid, and corpses of small animals such as mice or bugs and swollen human limbs floated on top of it. Some of these corpses were there for so long that they had rotten and green hair grew out of them. As it got further into autumn, the weather was getting chillier, and so was the water in the dungeon. Many slaves who were weak to start off couldn't survive for a day in the hunger and cold. Their lives were as cheap as dirt, but a lot of them persisted. Even under this extreme environment, the majority of the mine slaves from Chambord survived in this unforgiving condition by getting help from each other. It was quite a miracle. This was because a light hope in their hearts supported them. A Saint King appeared in Chambord. This was what the old Zolask told them. Zolask also told them that the Saint King of Chambord would come here with his invincible forces and destroy the Blackstone Kingdom and save them from the torture and pain. Even though it was only a beautiful dream, however, the dream represented hope. Before, they lived in the mine pits like zombies and already gave up on resisting the pain and torture. Hope was even a luxury to them. Therefore, even though the chance of the Saint King of Chambord coming here to save them was slim, and sounded like a delusion, a hope was better than nothing. But from the look of it, from their perspective, this hope was about to die. Maybe a Saint King of Chambord who established a saint-like law and defeated the joint forces of 9 kingdoms might one day conquer the Blackstone Kingdom with his invincible soldiers. But now, they all felt like they couldn't see that day after they sensed the decisiveness of the Blackstone King's murderous spirit. They knew that the Blackstone King wanted to kill them all before anything bad happened. The people in the water dungeon fell into a moment of silence as they felt like they were so close to grabbing onto the hope. "No, it's not like that." The thin and tall man suddenly sensed something. He frowned as he listened carefully. A light appeared in his eyes as he asked his peer beside him in excitement, "It's so quiet out there. Those jailers who would swear and shout when the wind blows by are not saying anything. Eddie, what do you want to say?" That peer started to shiver. He actually already understood what the thin and tall man was trying to say, but he couldn't believe it. He was asking, but it sounded like he was confirming it. Maybe old Zolask was right for once. The thin and tall man named Eddie squinted his eyes as he said loudly, "You are saying, no, no, no. How is this possible? How is this possible?" More people joined in on the conversation. A man whose frame looked big said, "He was once tough and big as a bear, but the harsh conditions at the mine pits made him so thin that his skin was literally covering his bones. However, he was in the best condition among the 400-500 people here." When he heard Eddie's words, he got very excited as well. He said in a tone as if he couldn't believe what Eddie was saying, but everyone could tell that he wished what Eddie said was true. At this moment, every survivor in the water dungeon got excited. Yeah, what if it is true? What if old Zolask prophecy came true? Everyone stared at the entrance of the dungeon and couldn't wait for what was going to happen. They were all surprised by the hope. At this moment, a series of fast footsteps sounded in the hall. It was the moment of truth. At that moment, everyone's heart was racing. They were all afraid that the Blackstone soldiers with their murdering knives would appear behind the gate and not their Saint King of Chambord. Even the thin and tall man Eddie, who used his positivity and spirit to motivate the desperate people in the dungeon, felt like his lips were dry. To be honest, he was afraid of death, and he didn't want to see these many of his peers die in this dark, sunless underground water dungeon. Creak dash. The rusted iron gate was opened. Then the bright sunlight shone into the dungeon. The poor slaves in the water dungeon weren't used to the eye-piercing white light. They all covered their eyes with their hands. In the bright light, they could only see the black figure of a young man in armor. They couldn't see his face at all. Wearing armor. Could it be a soldier of Blackstone? Ah! We are going to die. Where is our Saint King? Why isn't he here to save us? Many slaves of Chambord collapsed when they saw this. Some of them held their fists tight in anger and were ready to fight to the death. But at this moment, they all heard a very familiar voice. Your Majesty, this is the water dungeon, and they are all in there. But don't go in. It is filled with sewer-like water and it stinks. This voice. It's old Zolask's voice? The slaves in the water dungeon were stunned. How is this possible? Wasn't old Zolask beaten badly by Blackstone soldiers and was thrown into the corpse pit in the back mountains? They all thought. For days ago, Zolask was punished for inciting the slaves in public. One of his eyes was dug out and his tongue was cut off. After, all 4 of his limbs were crippled and he got thrown away. Every slave from Chambord saw that scene, and they were all shocked to hear Zolask's normal and unharmed voice. Also, what did he say? Majesty? Who else would be addressed by Zolask this way? Almost everyone thought of one person. They all knew about old Zolask's personality. It was stubborn like a stone. Except for the king of Chambord, he wouldn't call any other king you Majesty. The Blackstone king valued the administrative and executive abilities of old Zolask and offered to title him a noble of Blackstone if he called him Your Majesty, but old Zolask instantly declined. My citizens could be locked up in here for 4 days. Why can't I go in there for a moment? A crisp yet undeniable voice reached everyone's ears. It sounded very majestic. The figure that was covered by the sunlight suddenly shone again, and a golden light came off of him. With a warm yet majestic sensation, this golden light lit up every corner in this water dungeon. As if this light was heat, it made everyone feel an unprecedented warm energy flowing in their bodies. The wounds and scars that tortured them in this condition slowly healed under the envelopment of the light miraculously. A young yet valiant face appeared in everyone's eyes. This face was also engraved into everyone's soul. They couldn't forget this face for the rest of their lifetimes. Warrior of Chambord, Alexander is here too late. I know what you suffered through, and I apologize to every one of you as your king. Sorry. Alexander has stained the honor of Chambord's royal family and didn't protect my citizens, Faye said as he stepped into the stinky black water, the golden light coming off of him getting stronger and stronger. Paladin skill. Prayer after initiating this skill. It would heal the allies and help them recover. It would also heal the wounds on their bodies to a certain degree. At the same time, he walked into the crowd with a black long sword. The body of the sword vibrated and dashed through the crowd as it broke all the chains and yokes on their bodies. The king's sword technique was godlike. Although these iron chains were tightly wrapped around the slaves' bodies, the sword didn't harm any one of them. Every mine slave was stunned as they stood there and witnessed the whole process. After feeling the warmth in their bodies, and feeling the itchiness and numbness of their wounds healing, after feeling the chains on them breaking, after witnessing everything that was happening according to what they were all dreaming of when they were hungry and fainting, they forgot to think, forgot to talk, forgot to move, and even forgot about themselves. Is this real? Really real? Everyone was asking themselves. Some of them lightly pinched themselves to make sure that they were not in another dream. After half a minute, when the other warriors of Chambord, including Lampard and Drogba who chased after Faye, were about to step into the water dungeon, they suddenly heard a loud cheer. Hail the king! Hail your majesty! Long live the Saint King of Chambord! The volume of these cheers was so loud that they almost tore away the roof of the dungeon. The cheer had the blood-boiling joy and excitement, and it also had a sense of being wronged. At that moment, everyone, including Lampard, was touched. They almost felt like they were seeing the shocking and proud scene 4 months ago when the black-armored enemies attacked and sieged Chambord Castle, and the king was chopping down the enemy's 3-star warrior and saved Chambord. Everyone surrounding him then had also been cheering, Hail the king! The exhausted, wounded, and hungry mine slaves of Chambord in the water dungeon were in an aroused mood. Soon, they were all transferred to a relatively dry and more comfortable square with stone pillars on the side. The expeditionary force of Chambord had already destroyed the bloody stone pillar, and they had set up temporary tents, lit up cooking fires, set up big pots, and started to cook hot food. "Ah, it is you, old Tom. God, you are still alive. Oh God of war, this is real? Father, after you disappeared, my mom and I thought you were already dead. You are still alive. Thank the God of war. Thank His Majesty." Kunta. Aunt Nina cries every day because she misses you too much. Her eyes are almost blind because of it. You have to go back soon. Brother, do you still recognize me? I'm Kyle, big-headed Kyle. I finally found you. Did you know? After you went missing, father and mother were overly sad and had all passed away. Hundreds of these kinds of conversation occurred on the square. For the last couple of years, a lot of citizens of Chambord had gone missing, and that alone had destroyed many families. The people who were still alive had to suffer the pain and the consequences. However, they didn't expect to meet friends and lost family members among the slaves there. It might have been God's decrees. Of course, more than 200 mine slaves had malaria due to their weak body condition and died in the water dungeon before Faye came. Everyone gathered the corpses of the mine slaves of Chambord who died in Blackstone Fortress and put them all in the corpse pit at the back mountains. The burning flames that were shooting up at the sky were just like the hate of the mine slaves of Chambord. These flames soon enveloped the wounded and tortured corpse and provided the souls warmth and relief who were far away from their homes. After more than thousands of corpses were burnt to ashes, they were put into more than a dozen big chests. As the king of Chambord, Faye promised everyone that these ashes would be taken back to Chambord and brought up to the peak of the East Mountain and buried at the graves of heroes. As the king of Chambord, I promise to you all that no Chambordian would become a slave ever again from today onward. Any criminal who dares to harm a Chambordian would receive punishment from me, the king of Chambord, as well as the God of war himself. It doesn't matter what identity or status this criminal has. In front of the flames that could swallow the sky, Faye swore and promised to his loyal subjects. The 400 captured soldiers of Blackstone were brought to the stone pillar square. They were formed into a line, and the mine slaves of Chambord got the chance to point out the ones who had killed and tortured them or their peers. These soldiers would be executed on the spot, and the rest of them got their armor taken away from them and got kicked out of Blackstone Fortress. The situation finally calmed down a little. The main leaders like Faye and Lampard had a meeting under the sky and discussed the methods and ways of settling the citizens that they had just rescued. The expeditionary force had to hurry up and get to St. Petersburg on time so they could participate in the Zenith's military exercise that all affiliated kingdoms of Zenith had to take a part in. There was still a long way to go, and they couldn't really take these 600 to 700 weak former mine slaves who were exhausted due to long-term labor and a lack of food along with them. These people required delicate care and a long period of rest. After a while of talking, the final decision was that the second most powerful warrior Lampard, who was just behind Faye, would bring Drogba and Pierce along with 25 Xianxia and 50 city bylaw enforcement officers to protect and help to take these wounded poor citizens to Chambord. After getting them to the new head minister Bast, Lampard would lead the soldiers and rush back to try to catch up to Faye. According to this plan, Faye and Lampard would rejoin forces before arriving at the Holy Capital. After the decision was made, the Chambord's expeditionary force decided to rest at Blackstone Fortress for a night, and let the poor wounded citizens have a good night of rest. After they recovered their stamina a little bit more, Lampard would guard them back with the previously decided men. Faye switched back to druid mode and summoned for white wolves and 3 huge winged ravens. He scattered them around Blackstone Fortress to guard and patrol the fortress. This allowed his soldiers who fought a hard battle to have a great rest. "Your Majesty, something is attacking your bird," Drogba suddenly shouted with his loud voice. Faye didn't know what to say. Those raven were now called birds in Drogba's mouth. Faye looked up and saw a white-winged huge eagle that came out of nowhere and was chasing after and attacking the ravens that he just summoned. This eagle looked very vicious and aggressive. "Shoot it down for me," Faye commanded. His personal bodyguard Fernando Torres pulled his bow as he positioned a sharp arrow on it. The arrow shot out and accurately pierced the huge eagle's head. The huge eagle cried as it fell down the sky as it struggled and flattered its wings. "Your Majesty, this is a giant eagle that's used to scout and for long-distance communication, called the Wind Speaker Eagle. It's very clever, and many of the subsidiary kingdoms of the Empire breed them in their military. However, this beast has a less than good nature that is aggressive and brutal. So, that's why it attacked Your Majesty's giant bird." After seeing the white-winged giant eagle's dead body, old Zolas quickly came to a conclusion. "Your Majesty's giant bird." Faye once again started sweating by the words, "giant bird." It was very easy for people to think of an inappropriate body part after hearing those two words. But then again, Zolask was captured at a young age and brought to the Blackstone Kingdom to be a miner, and he endured dozen years of hellish mining slave life to survive until today. That was completely a miracle, but it was also this experience that gave him the knowledge and strong will that normal people didn't have. He was just like a walking encyclopedia that was covered in blade marks and soaked with blood in the scorching mountains, so his words were very credible. A giant bird used for communication? Faye scratched his chin, and he soon found a very good reason. This bastard's probably trained by the Blackstone King. Otherwise, why would it be this aggressive? Haha. Oh well, it looks quite tasty. Let's roast it first. Very soon, this fierce wind speaker eagle had its feathers mercilessly pulled off and placed on a rack. It was roasted into a golden yellow color, and the tempting smell permeated the air. The Saint Seiya, Oleg, and others all began drooling, approaching the rack with big watery eyes. In less than 10 minutes, there was a fine pile of bones left on the ground. Soon, the dark night finally enveloped the post-battle Blackstone fortress. Maybe it was because of the bloodbath that had just occurred during the day, the moonlight seemed to carry a little faint redness. On the stone pillar field was erected many large and small tents. Some even cleaned up the damaged little fortresses and lit up a warm bonfire. On top of paved hay, the Chambord miners went into a sweet dream with a sweet smile for the very first time. Everyone had an incredibly good sleep. Faye set an example. He gave the king's tent to some of the heavily injured miners and placed them under heavy care. This was naturally a means of gathering hearts, and at this moment it played a vital role, and once again, won the gratitude and respect of his citizens. In the night, Faye sat cross-legged at the top of the tallest tower of the Blackstone Fortress, overlooking four sides. The cold moonlight sprinkled over his body as if turning him into a silver-plated god. After observing all surroundings, Faye sat there quietly for a while, recollecting memories of today's battle. Then he changed to assassin mode and set up a few magic traps around their encampment. He used the assassin's Zen power to begin pioneering a few more energy connection channels and modified the energy scrolls. Up until now, besides the Thunder Lightning Fist, Corpse Piling Shockwave, and other ultimate skill scrolls that were copied from the Saint Seiya anime, Faye was also pioneering a few new energy connection channels that held a different power. Now, he was just training these skills himself to make some tiny tweaks. Time passed quickly, and sounds of magic beast roars were constantly heard from the surrounding mountains. Into the midnight, Faye opened his eyes. He finally completed 2 3-star level energy scrolls revision and perfection. Calculating the time, he could enter the Diablo world again to kill monsters and level up. Buzz, the sky blue portal appeared on the side, and Faye entered the Diablo world. This time he chose Barbarian mode. The Barbarian character was Faye's main account, and it had always been the character with the highest level. At the moment, the Barbarian character had reached level 36, and after these days of hardcore grinding, there were only one of the 6 missions left in the second map, Lutgolian, and that is to go to the last correct Tal Rash's tomb and kill the Lord of Pain, Duriel. In the rogue encampment, Faye first found Aunt Akira, who had just returned from the real world to the Diablo world, and he continued on learning some scroll-making and medicine-making techniques. Then, he reverse-summoned the beauty mercenary Elena, who was just at Chambord City, and asked about the city. Hearing that everything was running smoothly under the command of Minister Bast and military official Brooke, Faye was assured. The two of them then came to the Desert Pearl, Lutgolian, and passed through the teleportation array, and entered the last Tal Rash's tomb that was still unexplored. After killing countless demons and monsters, they finally came to a giant round altar. The altar was completely carved with mysterious and mystical inscriptions of runes. These runes were ancient and vicissitudes, with the breadth of antiquity. All the inscriptions gleamed with a crimson glow, and came and went. There were roars and whistling of devils coming out from the depth of the altar from time to time, as if it was tying down some kind of terrifying power. The terrifying energy surges like raging ocean, stuffing the entire tomb hall. Faye gently walked onto the altar, and on the sky-blue stone at the top of this 20-something meters tall altar, there was a wrist-sized hole. Faye took out the Hydraic staff which he finally forged after completing the previous 5 missions and placed it inside the hole. Rumble, the entire tomb began to shake violently, with the huge stones shaking above. Dirt and little rocks began falling down as if the whole cave was about to collapse. Loud banging sounds came from the ancient stone wall in front of the altar, as if some terrifying monster was slamming the wall. Very soon, the stone wall cracked, and a 2 meters deep hole appeared. Faye had seen the entire process in his previous life many times, so he couldn't be more familiar with it, and he even gave a smile to the beautiful mercenary who appeared a little nervous. Now, what he was going to do was enter the dimension behind this black hole, and kill the last boss in there, a giant bug-looking boss named Lord of Pain, Duriel. After completing the final mission in LitRPG, he will be able to move into the Tier 3 difficulty map, Karas. Based on Faye's memory from his previous life, Duriel was very difficult to deal with, and he was nicknamed the Noob Killer. His physical attacks were very strong, and he also had ice/freezing type skills. If a player was not carefully and got frozen or stunned, he or she would have no choice but just watch the fat giant bug stab you to death with its sharp limbs. They wouldn't even have the chance to fight back, and then they would have to wait to be respawned. But Faye was already well prepared. Before coming, he already prepared a plate armor that was high in physical defense, and also many magic equipments that reduced crowd control effects and increased dexterity for him and Elena. Faye closed his eyes and reminded himself of everything he had to watch out for. Then he nodded towards Elena, said, "Be careful," and then stepped into the pitch-black hole. The scenery in front of his eyes changed. Darkness and angry roars came directly towards Faye. The first thing Faye did after entering this dimension was not to find the Lord of Pain and start attacking, but to consume a town teleportation scroll and open up a portal that went to LitRPG. Although he doesn't know if he could be revived if he died. But that at least leaves an opportunity for Elena to run. A figure flashed beside Faye. Elena also entered this dimension. Roar! Ridiculous stupid humans? Are you looking for ball? With a smelly wave of odor rolling over towards Faye, a loud voice sounded. Turning around, Faye saw a giant bug-like monster that was over 20 meters tall appearing in his sight. His front limbs could even match Faye's height. This thing was entirely brown-red, covered with sticky stench disgusting juice. There were 4 snow-white spurs on top of its head, and the fat and chubby appearance reminded Faye of the giant queen bugs from the movie Starship Troopers. Although gigantic, it did look a little funny. Don't know why, at that moment, the slight nervous feeling from before immediately disappeared without a trace. He whistled, smiled and replied, "No, I'm looking for you, you moron." Instantly, the Lord of Pain, who felt that he was insulted, began roaring and attacking. However, today it didn't seem to be very lucky because, under merely 10 minutes, this little mountain-like fat bug was howling painfully with sticky stench body fluids shooting out as it fell to the ground. Then, with a series of light sounds, a lot of equipment appeared on the ground. Dead so soon. Duriel's easy defeat was a little unbelievable to Faye. That performance shouldn't belong to the last boss of a map. It hasn't even been 1 round and it already collapsed? How could it be this fragile? Could it be because of this sword? Faye looked at the giant black sword, and there seemed to be a little enlightenment in mind. Because of his video game memory from his past life, Faye already knew that the Lord of Pain had strong resistance towards thunder, fire, ice, and poison, the 4 elemental magics. If one wanted to defeat it, he must take the physical approach. So, when picking a weapon, Faye took a black 2-meter-tall giant sword that the blacksmith Chasai had crafted with the demon's remains. However, once the sword was brought into the Diablo world, it lost all its magic properties. To be precise, this equipment could only be grouped into the Tier 3 category of weapons, superior items, but if just evaluating the physical damage and sharpness properties, it was even better than Tier 4 category magic items. Considering Duriel's strong resistance to magic, Faye decided to take this Demon's Remain sword for the battle, and the effect was surprisingly good. Although when dealing with normal little monsters and demons, Demon's Remain weapons weren't very exceptionally effective other than for how sharp they were, it seemed like it was shockingly effective towards bosses. Does it mean, when faced with these types of bosses later on, all weapons made with this kind of material will be able to kill them like slicing vegetables? Faye fantasized for a while, and then he began to collect the equipment that fell onto the ground. Soon he was stunned, due to the surprise. Am I hallucinating? There's actually 2 Tier 7 set items? Faye almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. 2 green flashing sword-shaped equipment were lying there beside Duriel's body, exuding endless temptation. Although the game knowledge from Faye's past life mercilessly reminded Faye again and again that it was possible to get items of this tier in LitRPG on normal difficulty. But he got 2. After a slight hesitation, Faye finally believed his eyes, and then like a mad dog jumping towards its food. He embraced the 2 green swords and began to carefully and greedily observe them both. The 2 swords were still both unidentified, so they both flashed a dark green light. In terms of appearance, the 2 swords were one long and one short, having different shapes. The long one was clearly a 2-handed sword, but it could also be used one-handedly. Its overall length was about 1.6 meters, 5 fingers wide, long and heavy, with delicate design. The 20 centimeters long sword handle was tightly wrapped with bright red beast skin. What's amazing is that there were sharp sawtooth grooves on both sides of the blade, like the ferocious fangs of a beast. After extending for about 2/3 of the sword length, 2 grim barbs curved towards the sword handle, and after those 2 barbs, there were no more saw teeth on the blade, and it became sharp and smooth. On top of the blade's body was carved 9 mysterious dark black tadpole-shaped texts. Faye didn't understand its meaning, but it seems to contain a mystical ancient power, each text flashing with blood-red light. The short one was a single-handed sword, and its shape was relatively simple. The outside looked more like a padao than a sword, but both sides had an edge like a sword. It was approximately 1.2 meters long, 6-finger width, and the blade of the body was covered in countless strange dark green runes. With the glowing light, it gave the feeling that it was God's work. The blade's body was heavy and wide, and it was more suitable for hacking. There was no need to identify them. The first look of these 2 weapons already triggered familiar yet distant memories of Faye's past life, and it had already helped him determine the identity of these 2 swords, the Tier 7 set equipment, Bulkathos children. These 2 swords that were named after people had a very glorious past. According to the legend, in the world history of Diablo, the barbarian race once gave birth to a great and unrivaled leader, whose name was Bulkathos. The legend said that this barbarian leader had a terrifyingly strong strength that even the gods and demons feared him. He once led the powerful barbarian soldiers to achieve national freedom. In order to defend his homeland Mountain Arit, they defeated the devil army led by the evil Lord Baal. Then, his fame was recognized in all 3 realms. Even the gods and devils would take a few steps back when they see him. The entire Diablo world gave this most accomplished leader in the entire history of barbarians a legendary title, Immortal King, and the magic weapons and armors that he once used that had incredible power were also passed down, known as the Immortal King set, which was recognized to be a top-tier set items. Besides the Immortal King set, this barbarian leader also left behind 2 swords, and these 2 swords both carried incredible power. They formed another set together and was known as Bulkathos children. And these were the 2 swords in Faye's hands right now. Although the Bulkathos children were a few degrees weaker than the Immortal King top-tier barbarian set in both strength and magical effects, and they were just 2 swords without any armor, but to Faye's current level 36 barbarian character, this was already godlike equipment. According to Faye's past life video game memory, killing the second map's boss Duriel wouldn't give this kind of equipment. Not knowing why, these 2 swords appeared in Faye's hand. After consuming 2 scrolls of Identify and a golden light flashing past, both swords' complete stats and name appeared in Faye's vision. The name of the delicate two-handed long sword was called Bull Kathos Sacred Charge, Colossus Blade. One-handed damage was 70 to 195 and two-handed damage was 174 to 345. It had an extremely fast attack speed, 44 to 44 durability, 20% increased attack speed, 200% enhanced damage, plus 35% crushing blow, and all resistances were plus 20. The relatively shorter and simple one-handed sword was Bull Kathos Tribal Guardian Mythical Sword. Melee damage was 120 to 150. Had an extremely fast attack speed type sword, plus 200% enhanced damage, plus 50 poison damage, 2 seconds duration, plus 20 strength, and plus 50% fire resistance. And when these two swords were used together, it could be called Bull Kathos Children and give a full set bonus, plus 2 to all barbarian skills, plus 200% enhanced damage, plus 200% damage to demons and undead, plus 20 fire damage, and plus 25 defense. After being identified, the green light flashing on the two swords' body gradually disappeared and returned to the original color. Although they had different shapes, both swords looked green from afar, with the green being a darker shade on the shorter sword. Both swords were shrouded by a glimmer of silky looming green light, exuding a domineering chill, and giving off an incredibly mighty feeling. Faye lightly stroked the sword handles. A chilly sensation came and it felt great, just like touching the skin of a lover. This was really strange. The Diablo world's difficulty was divided into the normal, nightmare, and hell 3 levels. Usually, a player would at first enter the normal difficulty, and then after going past all the maps and completing all the missions, he or she would be able to enter the next level. According to Faye's past life's video game memory, the normal difficulty level which he was at right now shouldn't drop high-level set tier equipment like Bull Kathos Children, and there was only one reason, which was quite simple: only level 50+ characters had enough strength to pick up these two swords. As weapons that were once used by the Immortal King, they not only had a strict requirement for the wielder's level, there was also a strict requirement on the stats such as strength and dexterity. So, characters that were still in the low-level stages wouldn't be able to use these pieces of equipment at all. Thinking about this, Faye was suddenly shocked. Doesn't that mean... It means that his current level 38 barbarian, leveled up twice after killing Duriel, temporarily wouldn't be able to use this set item tier swords. But then, he quickly realized a strange phenomenon. At this moment, isn't he firmly holding onto these two swords? It seemed like there was no such harsh limit like he remembered. Faye then carefully observed, and very soon found the reason. Sealed Bull Kathos Children. It's actually a sealed set. Tier 7 weapons under the sealed status have 50% of the power as the unsealed version, but it also lowers the requirement for level and stats. As the user's level progresses, the item would be slowly unsealed, until level 60 where it gets fully unsealed, reaching the full potential of this set. So that's what's happening. Faye's heart was jumping like a rabbit. Very clearly, reality was again different from his memory of the Diablo video game. Things like sealed weapons never appeared before in the video game, but in this more realistic and lively Diablo world, it actually occurred. And it seemed like this special sealed effect was more designed for Faye's current level. Now, he could use this Tier 7 set equipment right away. Although 50% of the weapon's power was sealed away, under this status, both the Colossus Blade and Mythical Sword S single-hand wielding damage still reached a shocking 70. Such damage already far exceeded the purple and green sword that Faye currently used. Also, with Faye's increase in level, later on, these two swords' power will also increase correspondingly. At this moment, there wasn't the slightest hesitation for Faye to equip these two swords onto him. Holding the two swords, an unprecedented feeling of strength surged through Faye's entire body. Gently waving the swords, a chilly wave of green wind shot out, capable of tearing everything in its path. This was indeed a weapon set once used by the Immortal King, too powerful. After fondling it with love for a while, Faye then went to pick up other loots dropped by Duriel. All kinds of magical weapons flashed with tempting light, and amongst them, there were actually 3 gold light flashing Tier 6 rare items. Holy fuck, today's really my lucky day. Didn't expect so many good things to come out from this fat, retarded bug. Faye was so happy that he was gritting his teeth to the point where they were almost breaking. Would be nice if I can kill it several times. The 3 rare items were a bow, a light armor, and a pair of chained boots. After identification, the bow's name was called the Wild Rose Deadly Battle Bow. It had a delicate design, and it was a mysterious wooden long bow that had a rose carved on both ends and vines spreading across the body. The bowstring was a sky blue string of light, and its two-handed damage was 45 to 60, plus an ice effect. The light plate was called Titan's Battle Honor Armor, 95 defense, plus all types of magic effects. The chain boots were called Amber's Swift Battle Boots, and it had a plus 30 movement speed special effect. Faye thought for a second. These pieces of equipment were all pretty good, so he just gave them all to Elena. The bow was her only weapon, so the armor could provide defense for her relatively weaker body, and the battle boots could increase her speed to pull the distance between her and her enemy. These all seemed to be designed for Elena, and there were also a few more pieces of equipment, but they were all tier 4 magic items. It would be nice to just bring them back to the NPC at LitRPG in exchange for a few gold coins, so Faye took them all back to the inventory space. After packing up these great trophies and rewards, Faye equipped the new items and became much more powerful. With Elena's small hand in his, he searched for a bit more. After making sure that nothing was left, they found a hidden black entrance within the mysterious space that Duriel was originally. After going through this entrance, the environment also changed. As if they walked into a teleport portal, they came to another huge space similar to an underground tomb. In this space, a small mountain was floating mid-air. Iron chains that were locked onto the sides of this underground space were attached to this floating mountain. On this floating mountain covered in a ton of magic symbols and engravings, Faye and Elena saw Archangel Tyrell, who was imprisoned and tortured till the verge of death. As Faye expected, this Archangel, who was in a fancy angel battle armor and had white tentacle-like light coming off his back, also didn't have any intelligence. What he said to Faye was no different to what he would say in the game. What he said could be summarized into this: Diablo and his buddy Ball had gone to the east, and he wanted to Faye, who was acting as the hero, to eliminate these 2 demons. What he said wasn't useful at all. Faye was hoping this Archangel could give him some rewards. However, this Archangel was very cheap. He only gave Faye the quest but no actual reward. Faye was so pissed that he dragged Elena and got out of there. They got back to LitRPG using the town teleport scroll. Faye found an NPC merchant and sold the magic items that he had no use for and was paid 30,000 gold coins. He started to hum a little song as he organized his little personal storage space. Although he had completed all the quests in Act 2 and was able to get to the 3rd map in Diablo World, Karas Docks, through Boatman Meshif and continue his journey, after some thinking, Faye temporarily stranded that plan. He was better off to complete all quests in Act 2 with all of his characters before heading to Act 3. After spending some time with Elena alone, the Diablo world that was filled with demons and monsters became romantic as well. After Faye carefully told Elena about the future construction's plans and told her to tell Bast, they walked through the mountains with their hands together as the red moon in the Diablo world was at the highest point in the sky. Walking with a beauty shoulder by shoulder and watching the moon, it was something that Faye fantasized about many times in his previous life. He didn't expect to realize it here at this very moment. After another half hour, Faye exited Barbarian mode and chose Sorceress mode. He entered LitRPG and started to kill monsters and level up. His Sorceress character was level 33 now. With the help from the green set item, Arcana's Tricks, his Sorceress character was very powerful and was able to level up fast. Burning Sun Mountain, Blackstone Fortress. The moments before the dawn was the darkest. When Faye exited Diablo World, the teleport portal was still in the highest tower at Blackstone Fortress. After the bloody battle in the day, Blackstone Fortress was very quiet and peaceful. No enemy really attacked them. From the look of it, it seemed like Blackstone King knew that his troops were no match to Faye's and didn't plan any major military activity around getting back his lost fortress. Of course, there were some other reasons. From what the Blackstone King said, Faye had already sensed something. However, Faye wasn't too worried. All of his planning was useless in front of absolute power. Although Chambord wasn't strong enough to fight an empire, Faye was confident in Chambord's ability to take on the affiliated kingdoms. "Whoever dares show me the teeth, I will make him cry and regret." Lying on the roof of the watchtower and looking all the stars in the sky, all of Faye's thoughts scattered, and he went into a peaceful state. He enjoyed this rare moment of calmness as he stared at the beautiful night sky. When the sky was the darkest, the stars were the brightest. Like diamonds, they decorated the sky into a painting. Faye soon fell for it. Subconsciously, he started to look at the constellations in the sky just like what he would do in his previous life. As a fan of the Saint Seiya, Faye was heavily invested into the study of constellations. He was very familiar with the locations of the 88 constellations and formations of them, and the arrangements. Although the stars that he was seeing weren't the ones from his previous life, he did draw out the constellations when he paid close attention. Pegasus. Draco? Haha, I can actually find them. This is impressive. Faye rubbed his chin and came up with a great idea. Soon, come to the highest watchtower and find me. Faye's voice sounded in people including Lampard, Oleg, Torres, Pierce, and Drogba's ears. These people didn't sleep all night. Except walking around in the fortress to patrol everything, they tried their best to train and improve their strength. They all wanted Chambord to get a good score in the upcoming military exercise. In order to take some stress off of Faye's shoulders, they were very strict on themselves and worked very hard. After hearing Faye's voice, they dashed through the air and came to the watchtower quietly. "Your Majesty!" The 6 of them kneeled on the ground with one knee and saluted. "Up!" Faye stood on the verge of the watchtower and said. The nightly breeze made his long black hair and clothes fluttered in the air. Faye pointed at the sky and said with a smile on his face, "To you guys, the stars in the sky are pretty, shiny, and innumerable. But do you guys know that in Legends, the stars in the sky were not scattered around randomly? They occupied different areas in the sky and formed a number of vivid pictures. These pictures are called constellations. All the stars in the sky could be categorized into 88 constellations. Constellations? Although people on the Azeroth continent did study the stars in the sky and had different theories, there were legends and stories about the stars. The talk of constellations was a first time for these warriors. They didn't know why the king was telling them this, but they listened quietly and patiently. In the legends, the 88 constellations in the sky represented the 88 most powerful warriors on the earth. These warriors existed for the purpose of protecting love and justice. Their fists could tear space and their legs could break the land. They had invincible power, and you are all familiar with their name. They were called the Saint Seiya. That's why I named King's Guard the Saint Seiya. Look closely. The constellation made up of the 96 stars at the north looks like a roaring lion. Right? The 6 of them looked at the direction Faye pointed at and saw a lot of stars. Using their imaginations and drawing lines to connect these stars, it did indeed look like a roaring golden lion like what the king said. This constellation is so-called Leo, Faye said as he turned around and looked at them. His eyes landed on Lampard and said, Golden Leo is corresponding with the Leo Saint Seiya. In Legends, Golden Leo could tear its enemies into pieces using its teeth, and the Leo Saint Seiya's fist was filled with the power of lightning. As Faye said that, he reached out and an iron chest with a lion symbol on it appeared out of nowhere. With everyone staring at the chest in surprise, Faye opened the chest. An iron lion that looked like it was about to jump out like a real one despite that it wasn't real. Leo Saint Cloth, Frank Lampard. This saint cloth is specifically made for you. When you wear it, you will be able to feel the power of Leo. Faye wasn't even finished talking and a mystical event occurred. The Leo Saint Cloth actually came to life. It emitted a strange power as it floated in the air. At the same time, as if he was pulled by this power, Lampard floated into the air as well without using his warrior energy. Although he was already floating in the air, the black saint cloth suddenly shone a bright light and disassembled itself into 96 parts. These parts flew towards Lampard and put themselves onto Lampard's body. Boom! When he landed back onto the ground, the whole watchtower shook. Oleg, Drogba, and Pierce opened their eyes big as they were shocked. In front of them, Lampard was completely covered by a strangely shaped armor. Fingers, palms, wrist, arms, shoulders, head, back, waist, chest, abdomen, privates, thighs, knees, shanks, ankles, feet. Almost every part of the body was covered by the 96 pieces of armor perfectly. Every single part of the armor was perfect. They protected the body parts and didn't affect Lampard's movements. None of them had ever thought that there would be such a perfect armor in this world. Lampard himself was stunned as well. He felt an unprecedented comfort and power. He felt like this armor was connected with his body by blood. When he wore the armor, he felt like it became a part of his body. He didn't feel the heaviness and choppiness of regular armor. Instead, it was very flexible and agile. Power. It was the only thing that this saint cloth made Lampard feel. The director of this show, Faye, was shocked as well. He was just listening to the cold and mysterious voice that he didn't hear for a long time to explain this mystic scene to him. Give has been initiated. Do you want to activate Frank Lampard's Leo constellation star status and give him his Leo Saint cloth? After 3 seconds, the cold and mysterious voice appeared in Faye's head. Faye hadn't heard the voice for a while and was stunned by the voice and the message it was giving him. Faye had estimated that this cold and mysterious voice was associated with the Diablo world, and it was probably the voice of the gaming system. But now it suddenly appeared and was telling Faye about star status and Leo Saint cloth. That instantly flipped Faye's previous hypotheses. Maybe this voice was associated with the Diablo world, but it didn't belong to it. A better way to describe the relationship between the two was control. This cold and mysterious voice ruled above of the Diablo world. But now, Faye didn't have much time to think. He gave out the answer subconsciously, yes. Then what was described happened, this black Leo armor that Faye designed and that Charcy forged using the remains of the demons and covered using the black iron essence shone an eye-piercing light. The 96 components floated in the air and automatically flew onto Lampard's body. Miraculous skill? Give? It was one of the 3 miraculous skill that Faye got when he became the supreme leader of the rogue encampment. Faye instantly came up with a possibility. After he completed all quests in the rogue encampment using all 7 of his characters, his rewards included the 3 miraculous skills, learn, give, and summon that could be leveled up. Now it seemed like the leveling up ability of these skills were beyond Faye's expectation. Before the level up, Faye was able to use, give, and gifted Drogba the Taurus helmet and pierced the Saint Sword Excalibur. After the level up, he was able to give Lampard star status and the Leo Saint cloth. Boom! Lampard swung his fist after he felt the power the Saint cloth brought him. The air moved as if nothing happened. However, Faye and the other warriors discovered something unbelievable. After Lampard swung his fist, a circular fist-shaped dent that was about 1 meter in diameter instantly appeared on the Black Fortress that was about 20 meters away from the watchtower. Although it was a dent, it was quite deep. The edges of the dent were so clean that it seemed like the fist-shaped dent was there from the beginning and not punched out by someone later. There weren't any cracks or anything. Then, a deep booming noise sounded as if the air exploded out of high pressure. Such a fast punch. Is this the increase in power that this so-called Leo Saint cloth brought to Lampard? Although Drogba, Pierce, Oleg, and Torres had seen many miraculous events created by Faye, their brains were still blank when they saw this for a moment. They couldn't believe that Lampard's strength had increased more than 2 times. What was more mystical was that a looming and vague energy that wasn't warrior energy nor magic energy enveloped Lampard. This energy felt ancient, peaceful, unlimited, as if it was from among the stars. They only felt this way about the numerous stars in the sky. Faye quickly recovered from the shock. He sensed that the 3 miraculous skill dash, learn, given, and summon weren't that simple. He rubbed his chin and suddenly pulled the long sword from the scabbard that was on Torres' waist. He shook his hand, and a few strikes flew towards Lampard's arms, chest, waist, thighs, and knees like lightning. The strikes were so ferocious that people like Drogba even smelt blood. However, Lampard just stood there and didn't move. Even the warriors on the watchtower weren't surprised. Their expressions didn't change as they trusted their king 100%. Tink, 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 tink. In the dark night, the sparks appeared and were very eye-catching. Crack dash. The sword in Faye's hand was experiencing a lot of strain and broke into 4 pieces and fell to the ground. I used all of my strength, Faye said with a smile on his face. Even though the huge force coming from the strikes pushed Lampard, who was a powerful warrior, back 5 steps, the strikes didn't even leave a dent or a mark on the Black Leo St. Cloth. It was indestructible. The remain of Demon's toughness didn't disappoint Faye. Also, it was clear that the armor protected beyond physical damage. Under such aggressive strikes, 60 to 70% of the force was cancelled out by it. Lampard didn't feel uncomfortable at all from his expression. The warriors on the watchtower had lost all thinking capabilities. Magical Saint Cloth. Then, what was more magical occurred. As Lampard lightly raised his arms, an image of the head of a roaring and angry lion that was formed by 96 stars vaguely appeared behind him. It looked real and fascinating. Then, these 96 components that represented the 96 stars lit up in a flame and disassembled from Lampard's body and reformed into the black iron lion form as if it was still in the chest. Then, the black chest that had golden lion symbols engraved all over it, and a king holding up a scepter automatically floated into the air and contained the black iron lion into it. Then the chest closed as a black light shone. As the moment that the light shone the brightest, it dashed into Lampard's body and disappeared. This is a warrior weapon. Frank, you advanced to a moon rank warrior. As soon as Torres saw the scene, he thought of something and shouted. Everyone else on the watchtower were also shocked. On Azeroth continent, star-ranked warriors and mages were at the bottom of the pyramid. Only after these warriors advanced to moon rank, they would have actually stepped through the first threshold and can start training for real. The training method for moon-ranked warriors were completely different from star-ranked warriors. After reaching the peak of a 9-star, a human body couldn't contain more warrior energy or magic energy. It was impossible to store more energy in the body to improve one's strength. The ancestors came up with many ways of improving strength. The most common choice for a warrior was to find a high-quality weapon that had a similar enough spirit in it and make it his or her natal warrior weapon. Moon-ranked warriors were able to keep their warrior weapon inside their body, just like how Lampard kept the Leo St. Cloth into his body. That was why Torres thought the St. Cloth was a warrior weapon and thought Lampard had instantly advanced to a moon-ranked warrior. No, Lampard said as he shook his head. It's a really strange state. I can't really explain it. Faye smiled as he moved onto another topic. Every St. Cloth corresponds with one constellation, so they are unique. They are made out of precious material, so only heroes who great contribution to the Chambord Kingdom will get their own St. Cloth. Lampard has been protecting the royal family for the last 4 years earnestly and prevented the conspirator Bazar from getting into power. He had also assisted me, the king, to defeat the black armored enemies and the 9 Kingdom coalition. He had accumulated a lot of merits, and that's why I have awarded him with Leo St. Cloth. Do you guys have any objections? Not at all, Your Majesty. The envy on Torres's, the blonde young man's, face couldn't be hidden. It was very different than jealousy. Motivation shone in his eyes. I will contribute to Chambord one day and get my own St. Cloth. I would agree with your decision 100%, Your Majesty. Mr. Lampard deserves it. Drogba scratched his head and giggled. Pierce and Oleg didn't have any objects as well. Pierce got his life back because of Faye, and Oleg had his current status because Faye protected him using his personal prestige and credits. He had seemed to be a member of Bazar's henchmen, and his ending wouldn't be any better than the military judge Xianxia otherwise. On top of their own loyalty, the effect of the Hulk potion make them even more loyal. If someone captured Faye and asked them to kill themselves, they would do it without hesitation. However, you guys have merits as well. Pierce, to protect Chambord, you used your own body to block the enemy's swords and knocked away a siege ladder. You almost died from it. Drogba, when faced with thousands of elite black armored enemies, you dared follow me, the king, and charge into them to go one against hundreds. You killed more than 100 enemies and were injured severely. You guys also have earned merits from the battle with the 9 kingdoms and today. You two also deserve Saint Cloths. As Fei said that, he flipped his palm and took out 2 iron chests from his storage space. When the 2 chests opened, a magnificent and dominating black metal bull and a black metal goat with 2 horns pointing up the sky appeared. Similar to Lampard's St. Cloth, the Taurus constellation contained 120-05 stars, so the Taurus St. Cloth contained 125 components. The Capricorn constellation contained 50 stars, so the Capricorn St. Cloth contained 50 components. Every component represented a star in the sky and had a different star power. As Fei answered that cold and mysterious voice in his head and initiated, "Give." Both Drogba and Pierce had their star status opened. The Taurus St. Cloth and Capricorn St. Cloth found their owners and flew to them. Under the stars, they attached themselves to the 2 people with an energy flame. Instantly, both people felt the power and connectedness that Lampard was feeling a moment ago. At the same time, the ancient, peaceful, unlimited star energy also appeared on their bodies. Although it was vague, it was there. In terms of you two, you have established merits and should get the rewards as well. They won't be complete, just a heads up. Fei looked at Oleg and Torres and gave them the appropriate rewards. Torres obtained the Bow of God, which was a component of the Sagittarius St. Cloth, and Oleg got the chest armor and the fist weapon of the Cancer constellation. The second day, after the expeditionary force cooked and had breakfast, they started to move under the smoke from the bonfires. The mine slaves were heading back to Chambord with Lampard, Pierce, and Drogba. After getting the items of the 3 constellations, their strength had increased dramatically, and they would have no issue in terms of guarding the former mine slaves back to Chambord. Fei, on the other hand, led the force and continued marching towards the capital of the empire with the elder princess. The 2 groups made a promise that they would meet on the plain outside of the capital city in 6 days, before sunset. The morning breeze was a little cold, and the morning glow was red as blood. Blackstone Fortress was busy again. After the battle yesterday, nearly 4,000 elite soldiers of Blackstone were killed here. Except for the blood and corpses on the ground, there were also a lot of abandoned armor and weapons. Former mine slaves who witnessed what happened yesterday didn't hesitate to pull the armor and weapon off of their enemies' corpses to equip themselves. Then, they took away everything that was valuable and filled up a dozen horse carriages. Although most of the freed slaves weren't in a good condition due to the long-time suffering, their spirits were lifted since the Saint King of Chambord descended from the sky and saved them. With the new hope, they assembled into formations under Lampard's lead. People on Azeroth continent valued and emphasized power and strength, so most of the men knew how to ride horses and use weapons. Currently, the men were riding on the war horses stolen from the stables, and the women and kids were riding on the horse carriage for protection purposes. With weapons drawn out and a ton of murderous spirit, this troop looked a little dominating. The 2 groups went on separate paths. The 3 warriors led by Lampard saluted at Fei, then took off. For a moment, farewells and prayers resonated on the cold square in the fortress during fall. At this moment, the thin boy Modric assisted Elder Zolask to walk to Fei. After saluting to Fei as one of his subjects, the Elder Single kneeled down to the ground. "Your Majesty, please let me join your expeditionary force. These burning sun mountains is remote, deserted, covered in mist, and dangerous. There are regions of forests and regions of steep mountains. If the expeditionary force doesn't have a guide, it's very easy to get lost in there. I've been taken here and became a slave when I was 26 years old. I have lived here for 21 years now, and I know every little path, mine pits, and road and ferocious beasts in these mountains. I promise that with my help, Chambord's forces can get thought the burning sun mountains within the least amount of time. But your body?" As a high-level idiot when it came to directions, Fei knew the struggle of getting lost. That was why after he heard that his eyes shone. What the old Zolask said made sense. Fei did need a guide when leading the troop through these mountains that he knew nothing about. But the elder in front of him was still recovering from his injuries and torture. Although the potions from the Diablo world helped him to heal up, his body was still in an exhausted condition. Long-term military traveling would only worsen it. Don't worry about me, Your Majesty. My old bones are still hard. This elder was very tough. With his white hair fluttering in the wind, he left Modric's assistance and lifted a black rock that was about 100 pounds beside him with his arms. He said with a bragging tone, "Your Majesty, look, this old man can still lift huge rocks. Please let this old Zolask contribute to Chambord's uprising when I can still walk." Zolask got emotional and shouted, "For more than 20 years, I've been waiting for this day for too long." Faye was touched by the elder's passion and courage. "Okay, if this is the case, Oleg, bring a roaring flame beast here and give it to our experienced guide." When he said that, Faye looked at Modric, who was looking at him, and smiled. "Little guy, come and ride with Uncle Zolask. You will have to take care of him on the way." "Ah, really? Thank you, Your Majesty." "Hail, Your Majesty." Little Modric almost jumped into the air out of excitement. He wanted to ask the king to let him join the force, but he didn't expect the king to say it first. The scene of Faye smiling and reaching out to him under the sun that Modric saw when he just woke up from fainting was engraved into this thin blonde boy's soul. Being able to follow the king around was the best news he heard in a long time. Warden Oleg quickly came by with a strong roaring flame beast. After several generations of cultivation, this level 4 demon beast had become obedient and tame. However, the calmer nature did cause their power of a level 4 demon beasts to go down as well. That was why they were knocked over by the strong men in heavy knight armor. But after getting fed some Hulk potion that was mixed into their food, they had signs of atavism, just like how the fatty Oleg was showing signs of a second youth. The weight-carrying and charging ability of these beasts had increased dramatically, and the light red flame energy surged around their hooves, just like the wild roaring flame beasts. The tusks in their mouth grew out and became sharp, and their wild nature came back. Although they became ferocious and aggressive again, they were obedient to their masters. Little Modric became excited and ran to the beasts to grab the reins. However, this roaring flame beast suddenly got aggressive when it saw a stranger coming close to him. It raised its red front hooves and was about to stomp down forcefully. The big black dog suddenly opened its eyes and barked angrily. A funny scene occurred. As if it was Big Boss teaching its henchmen a lesson, this roaring flame beast took back its hooves embarrassedly. The only thing was that it wouldn't let Modric and Zolask get close to it. Faye felt a little embarrassed as well. He didn't expect this beast to not give him any face. When he wanted to switch back to druid mode and talk to this little guy, a beautiful figure walked by. Slim, jade-like fingers lightly patted this roaring flame beast's head, and she smiled as signaled towards Modric and old Zolask. Something shocking happened. The ferocious roaring flame beast walked to the two people and kneeled down obediently. "Angela, how did you do it?" As the troop started to move outside of Blackstone Fortress, Faye asked with a smile on his face. He was riding on the back of Blackie with his fiancée in his arms. With the light body fragrance in his nose, the chilly autumn wind didn't feel that bad anymore. Although the morning was cold, Angela didn't want to ride in the caravan. She was wearing a thin white dress. The edge of the dress was fluttering in the wind, and it only covered 2/3 of her thigh. Under the dress, she was wearing tight black jeans. She looked fabulous with the white and black contrast. It was her idea to ask Faye to ride with her on Blackie. The girl didn't dare show fast she was falling or mind the kind blessings from the people around her. The smile and the looks others gave them made her blush. She only felt the strong arms around her waist and the big and warm shoulders behind her. "I don't really know." Angela frowned as she heard Faye's question. "I feel like they can understand me. They are kind, cute, just like little babies." It was the same answer. Faye smiled. He hypothesized that Angela had an unknown power that would make all animals feel intimate towards her for some mysterious reason. When the soldiers were trying to train the roaring flame beasts and war horses before, her ability was utilized to a great degree. It didn't matter how ferocious or aggressive the animal was, it would become calm and cute in front of this girl and her pure smile. However, it was obvious that Angela herself hadn't discovered where that ability came from. As the two of them were talking, The team had already marched out of Blackstone Fortress from the back gate. "I can't leave this fortress to the Blackstone Kingdom and its ambitious devil-like king." After everyone got out, Fei used his barbarian strength and caused multiple defensive walls and buildings in the fortress collapse to the ground. This fortress that was carefully built and maintained by several generations of kings turned into a wasteland. If the Blackstone Kingdom wanted to restore its former glory, they would need to spend at least 3 years repairing this fortress. For the next day, the expeditionary force's march was very smooth. The deeper the troops went into the burning Sun Mountains, the more danger there was. Strange terrain and cliffs were everywhere. 100-year-old trees blocked the sun, making it hard for the sun to shine on the ground. As noon passed, visibility was already getting dim. When night came, a huge white fog appeared, and the visibility was really bad. Stones and trees were everywhere on the side of the road, and thick layers of leaves and dry moss with a little rotten smell filled the road. Without clear landmarks and reference points, it was really easy to get lost. At this point, Fei glad that he had Zolask, the GPS that didn't need a battery to function. Like the elder said, he actually knew every road in the mountains by heart. Didn't matter if it was a clear road or a path that was abandoned for long. He knew where they were. Every time when it seemed like there was nowhere to go, he was able to point out a way and save the troop a lot of time and trouble. The troop did come across a few mine pits owned by Blackstone on the way, and Fei would send out the fatty warden Oleg to destroy the pits, kill the guards, and release the mine slaves. Since mine slaves from Chambord were gathered together by Blackstone King, Fei didn't need to send his men to take care of them and guard them back to Chambord. There were quite a few people like old Zolask who knew the way around the mountain. All the mine slaves couldn't wait to go home, so they kneeled down to thank Fei and cheered as they disappeared into the fog with peers from the same kingdom. After 3 more hours of marching, the burning Sun Mountains were already so dark that it was hard to travel. Although the sun hadn't set, the big trees blocked the light. "Your Majesty, I remember there is lake not too far away. There is also a large area covered by small rocks which is good for setting up camp. How about we just rest here for the night?" Old Zolask rode the roaring flame beast and suggested. "Okay." Fei nodded as he looked at Angela, who already fell asleep in his arms. After about half an hour, a clear small lake appeared. There was grass on the ground, but it was yellow and semi-dried, like a beautiful carpet that was laid on the ground. Not too far away, there was a small forest made out of big stones. The terrain wasn't bad as the stones were flat and dry. It was a great spot to set up the camp. In the autumn, this view of the mountains and lakes was fascinating. However, Fei frowned. There were already fire and lights around the lake, and there was a lot of noise made by humans. There were already people there, and there were a lot of them. That's strange. Not many people know about this lake. How are there so many people here? Seeing that most of the area by the lake had already been occupied, old Zolask was a little dumbfounded. Since the camping ground he recommended to the king was previously occupied, he felt like he didn't do a good job as a guide. "No problem, we will go check it out first." Fei saw the torch light in the distance and smiled. "I see that there are still some places by the lake. Although it might be a bit crowded, it should be enough for us to settle down." But, just at this moment, swish dash! A white arrow plumed with fresh blood suddenly shot out from the dark distance, and inserted right into the ground before their feet. Half of the arrow was already in the ground, with its shaft was still trembling. The blood beads scattered everywhere, and along with the arrow came an overbearing shout from a tree in the distance. "The Blood Edge mercenary group is settling and taking care of some affairs here. Leave if you don't want to die." The blood-dripping white feather arrow signified that taking one step forward will be met with death. Such a warning was very popular in the land of Azeroth, and the Chambord Expedition Army once used it in the Blackstone Kingdom's territory. Although the words spoken were a little rude, it was still reasonable. If there is really a mercenary group that was taking care of some private business in the distance, it was indeed reckless and impolite for Fei's group to just pass through them. But, after hearing the guy giving his name, Fei's face immediately changed. Not just Fei, the old Zolask and young Modric by Fei's side also started shaking uncontrollably. They held their fists tightly, and a fierce flame burned in their eyes. Blood Edge Mercenary Group. It's actually the Blood Edge Mercenary Group. These 4 simple words, to the countless mining slaves from Shambord, actually represented a terrifying nightmare. Because 80 to 90% of the Shambord mining slaves were all captured and sold to the scorching mineral mines inside the Blackstone Kingdom by all kinds of methods used by this mercenary group either under broad daylight or in the dark. Blood Edge was a Tier 5 mercenary group, and it was quite reputable in the Zenith Empire. There were quite a few elite fighters in the group, their infamous name was spread very far away, and they would accept any mercenary missions to make money. Capturing slaves was one of the main ways for this mercenary group to gather money, and many Tier 5 or 6 subsidiary countries in the Empire were often bullied by this group. However, since these experienced rascals in the group acted very sly and cautious, and they had a strict organization and was secretly supported by some imperial aristocracy, they never left behind any survivors or evidence when they executed missions. That's why even if an issue got to the imperial court, the Imperial Knights Palace's law enforcement team wouldn't be able to do too much about them. It was worth mentioning that, in Azeroth, mercenaries are a peculiar force. They don't belong to any kingdom, but yet they penetrated every part of the continent, accepting all kinds of commissions from different forces or parties, including joining wars. Their shadows would even appear in some wars between different empires. In terms of strength, some powerful mercenary groups, although not having any set territory or title, still were equipped comparably to empires. And the Blood Edge Mercenary Group was one of the 3 top-tier mercenary groups within the Zenith Empire. Faye jumped down from the big black dog and petted it on the head. This thing understood Faye right away and carried the sleepy Angela to the center of the army. Faye glanced at a 100-year-old giant tree in the distance. His eyes were like lightning, and he instantly saw a cold-looking skinny mercenary with a crossbow standing on the branch. He was dressed in dark black cloth, and there was a blood-red machete symbol embroidered on the sleeve and collar of his cloth, and he was grinning and chuckling provocatively towards Faye's direction. Faye smiled at him, revealing his white teeth. Then he raised his arm with the blood-dripping white arrow in his hand and snapped it in half. This move meant go fuck yourself. He was seeking revenge, never going to stop until death. The short, skinny mercenary's face suddenly changed, and he became even more shocked after seeing the big army behind Faye. He reached his hand to his back, pulled out a horn-like thing, placed it beside his mouth and was about to sound it to warn his group. However, swish, a sharp arrow silently pierced the night sky, into the mouth of his that just opened. Poof dash! The short and skinny mercenary didn't even get to scream, and he fell off the tree. Pew 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 pew. At the same time, a string of arrows was shot from the young blonde Fernando Torres's bowstring. The sharp arrow's speed was incredibly fast, but it didn't make any shocking sound. Yet, blood began blooming, just like the death god's cold touch. The arrows easily shot dead the other Blood Edge scouts on several other trees. One arrow takes one soul, and all the arrows were merciless. Faye smiled at the blonde teen beside him and gave him a look of appreciation. It was indeed a good call to cultivate him towards the Sagittarius Saint Seiya direction. Torres's talent in archery was indeed rare. Flank! Faye made a gesture, then Warden Oleg Torres, check all lead 10 Saint Seiya and quickly started closing in from 3 directions. Faye just brought old Zolask and Modric, and they casually walked towards the distant firelight at ease. By the lakeside, the night gradually deepened. On the side of the stone forest beside the lake, the torches were burning loudly with bursting sparks, and 2 groups of people were in a confrontation. One side seemed to be a caravan group, about 40 people, all in light armor. They were all neatly dressed and were tightly surrounded in the middle. All of them had a nervous expression, and some even began sweating. The leader was an elder with a red nose and was in a black robe, and on his left and right sides stood a swordsman in white and a charming woman in a red skirt. All 3 of their expressions were uneasy, and they guarded the 3 carriages behind them. Surrounded them were over 200 people, all wearing a dark red outfit with the bloody machete symbol embroidered on their cloth. They were not only superior in numbers, their weapons were also of a higher tier, and they also had 10 strong crossbow users aiming at the center. Those cold crossbow arrows could definitely penetrate a heavy armor knight's armor, just like the grim reaper of death, freely harvesting life. And standing at the front were 4 leader-like people in dark red light armor. There was one giant muscular one-eyed guy wearing a black eye patch, a seemingly humble and nice middle-aged person, a white skinny young man that kept on glancing at the young woman in red on the opposite side, as well as a beautiful girl about 18 years old. The atmosphere between the two sides was obviously unfriendly. It's probably because 20 or so people died already at the scene. Most of them were killed by crossbow, and they clearly belonged to the disadvantaged side. The Blood Edge mercenary group? The red-nosed, black-robed old man holding a magic wand roared in a deep voice. Is your group crazy? A little Tier 5 mercenary group actually dares to lay hands on the Soros caravan group. You are not afraid that President Soros will unleash his wrath after finding out and level your Blood Edge group to the ground. Haha, you are indeed right, the Reverend Manager Redknapp. The Soros group is indeed loaded, and if it was any other time, even 10 Blood Edge mercenary groups wouldn't dare to fuck around. However, this time you guys thought you were smart enough to take the shortcut through the scorched mountains and was accidentally noticed by my brothers. Haha, isn't this God's will? After killing you all, President Soros won't know a thing about it. And how would he lay his hands on our Blood Edge mercenary group? The one-eyed muscular leader of this Blood Edge team smiled and was completely unmoved by Elder Redknapp's words. How did you guys really find out about this? The elder in black robe held tight to his wand and asked, as he was a little unwilling to accept fate. About this matter, you can go ask Death yourself. The bald muscular guy was afraid of any other accidents. He was unwilling to say more, and was about to command his crossbow archers to shoot. However, his face suddenly changed as if he heard something, and then he immediately turned around to look into the distance. This move suddenly made everyone a little dumbfounded, and then they followed the bald muscular man's vision and looked, and they noticed that there was actually a young teen in black light armor casually strolling down as if he was taking a walk. His expression was extremely relaxed, and behind him followed an elder and a kid. The elder had a head full of white hair, and the kid was skinny like a bamboo stick as if he didn't get enough nutrition. It was as if both would be blown away if there was some mountain wind. By the time they got closer, everyone could take a closer look. The young man in black had waterfall-like black hair, and he was pretty handsome with a faint smile on his face. His eye kept glancing past the people of the Blood Edge mercenary group as if looking at a group of pigs waiting to be slaughtered. Behind him, the elder and the kid were a little nervous, but the way the two looked at the people from Blood Edge were like 4 sharp knives as if they were anxious to carve the enemy's heart out. Who are you? Something was definitely wrong. Unknowingly, those 3 got into 100-meter range, but the hidden scouts on the periphery areas didn't give out any warning. Something clearly had happened to them. Thinking about that, the bald, muscular man's pupil slightly shrunk, and he became vigilant. Just passing by, Faye casually replied. Then he almost immediately burst into laughter, just realizing that he might have played it too cool. And then he tried for a while to hold back his laugh, and finally solemnly said, I suddenly met a few acquaintances, so I decided that it would be convenient to come and collect some debt. Collect some interest first. There was not the slightest energy fluctuation on Faye's body, nor were there any magic elements surging, and he just appeared to be a vulnerable young man without the slightest power to fight back. Behind him, Zolask and Modric's footsteps were even more unstable, and one look was enough to tell that they were not pros. However, it was those 3's appearance of being vulnerable people that made the bald muscular guy a little nervous. Out of caution, the one-eyed bald-headed giant didn't immediately react, but he quietly hinted the 3 assistants around him to command other mercenaries to tightly surround the Soros caravan to prevent anyone from escaping, and then he faintly asked, Oh? Collecting debt? What kind of debt? Life debt. Faye stroked his chin and said with a smile, To whom? The bald-headed muscular man's face changed and a thought already popped into his mind. Blood Edge mercenary group. Faye said it word by word, and at this time, his face had turned completely cold. His eyes were like blades, landing on the one-eyed bald man's face. Faye let his energy surge, and that instant surge in energy and change in the atmosphere actually gave this elite of the Blood Edge mercenaries a subconscious instinct of not daring to stare into the other person's eye.